Dust clung to every plank, every bootstep, every breath. It was the kind of dust that didn't just settle, it watched. Garnet Ridge was a town gutted by war and gutted deeper still by peace. Men who came back from killing had forgotten how to build, how to live. They drank, they cursed, they traded daughters for debts. And today they gathered like buzzards around a girl. Clara stood barefoot on a warped wooden crate, wrists bound, with hemp so tight the skin puckered red. She wasn't crying. That had stopped hours ago. Her face was still, stone quiet, with eyes that had seen too much, too fast. Her hair had once been brushed with ribbons. Now it hung tangled and dust-streaked, half hiding her cheek where a bruise bloomed like rotten fruit. Barkeep Jonah, fat and glistening with liquor sweat, paced in front of her like a man auctioning livestock. He grinned like the devil with a pistol tucked into his belt and a coin purse heavy with dirty money. "Gentlemen," he bellowed, the drawl of the prairie thick on his tongue. "What we got here is a real fine offer. One time only. Young, clean. Not a scratch on her," aside. From her mouth, which I assure you she knows when to keep shut, laughter cracked through the crowd. About 24 men, ranch hands, drifters, ex-soldiers with tobacco-stained beards and long dead eyes. Some leaned against hitching posts. Others gripped whiskey bottles, eyes gleaming. "She got a name?" One man hollered. Jonah turned, spat. "She had one, don't need it now." Clara flinched only slightly. "Bidding starts at $30 and a good pair of boots." The crowd roared and the voices came like arrows. 35 and a mule saddle, 40 and a bottle of Kentucky, 50 and a box of bullets. Jonah pointed, counting out each bid like a preacher reading sin aloud. 55, 60, 60 and a sack of grain. Clara's breathing stayed shallow. She didn't look at them. Instead, she stared past them, to the farthest edge of the town where the land dipped and rose again in golden ridges, where clouds floated without chains and trees weren't burned for firewood. She had imagined that place once as a child. A place without voices, without hands, without men shouting prices for her bones, and then a silence sharp as a rifle crack. Heads turned. Even the drunkard straightened up. At the back of the crowd, leaning in the shade of the old livery stable, stood a man. Tall, still. He raised his hand. No voice, no gesture. Just one hand, slow and sure. He wore a coat meant for colder weather, cracked with age and dust slicked from the road. A hat shaded his face, but the wind tugged at it just enough to show a scar, pale and deep, trailing down his left cheek, ending just above the curve of his jaw. Jonah squinted, annoyed. "You, stranger, you bidding?" The man didn't answer. "Hell, fella, you mute or just stupid? Still nothing, just that hand raised, not trembling, not bargaining." Jonah laughed uneasily. 60 and a sack, eh? Fine. Ain't seen a speechless fool with cash before, but here we are. Sold. He slammed a rusted cowbell with the flat of his hand. The other men grumbled. Some spit. A few laughed. "Hell, let him have her. Won't last a week. Mute'll probably scare her worse than the rest of us would have." Clara blinked slowly. Her throat felt like gravel. The man moved forward through the parting crowd. Not hurried, not hostile, just calm. When he reached the platform, he stepped up, pulled a hunting knife from his belt, and in 2 swift motions, sliced the ropes from Clara's wrists. She flinched, but he didn't grab her. He didn't touch her at all. Instead, he reached into his coat and withdrew a thick wool shawl. He handed it to her, gently, like offering bread to a starved dog. Their eyes met for the first time. His were gray, weathered, deep as creekstone and just as silent. He stepped down and turned his back to her, walking without a word down the middle of the street. The crowd stepped aside, watching him like he'd just broken every rule they'd written in blood. Clara stared down at the shawl in her hands. Warmth, safety, a choice. She climbed down from the crate, knees weak, steps uncertain. She nearly dropped to the ground, but her legs caught. She followed him, one step, then another. Men jeered behind her. "You'll wish we bought you instead. She's walking off with a ghost. Bet she don't last the night." But Clara didn't turn. Her fingers tightened on the shawl. The man kept walking. Toward the sun, toward the hills. She matched his steps, her head lifting. No one tried to stop them. No one dared. The fire crackled low in the canyon hollow, its smoke rising soft into a navy sky peppered with stars. Clara sat cross-legged a few feet from it, blanket tight around her shoulders, boots off, toes raw from the saddle. She should have been asleep. Elijah was, or at least pretending to be, lying with his back to her, one arm over his eyes, hat pulled low. But the questions wouldn't stop. They buzzed in her skull like hornets. Why had he raised his hand? Why hadn't he spoken? Why didn't he ask for anything? She crept to his saddlebag as quietly as the wind. It was worn, cracked leather, held together with hand-stitched repairs. Inside she found practical things, cartridges, dried corn, a whetstone. Then beneath a folded shirt she found the paper. It was yellowed, fragile, smelled of tobacco and pine. She unrolled it carefully. Elijah Cade, private, Union Army, honorable discharge. There was a date, late 1865. A note in faint script. Return to Iron Ridge, no next of kin. She sat back, fingers trembling. So that was his name. Elijah. He stirred and she froze, but he didn't turn. Just let out a breath, long and quiet, like he'd been holding it for years. The next morning she didn't say a word about the letter. And neither did he. He helped her into the saddle, handed her a strip of jerky without looking her in the eye, and climbed onto the gray gelding with a silent grunt. They rode north. The trail was empty, no wagons, no travelers, not even crows, just a broken ribbon of dirt threading between scorched grasslands and pines that whispered with old war ghosts. She watched him closely now. Elijah was quiet, but not hollow. He studied the sky like it still meant something, knew when to spot, weather from a flick of cloud, whistled twice and a rabbit darted out like the land itself answered him. Still he didn't speak. Clara tried once. As they stopped near a stream, she asked, "Are you going to keep me?" He didn't flinch, just tilted his head slightly like he was listening to something deeper than words. Then finally, he looked at her. His eyes were pale gray, like smoke caught in still water. He shook his head slowly. No. She swallowed. Something inside her loosened and tightened all at once. That night, as they made camp in the basin of a dry arroyo, Elijah lit 2 fires again. One for her, a bit distant. The other for himself. She sat near hers watching him work, careful, precise, methodical. He treated the land like a wounded animal. Gently, respectfully. The next few days unfolded like pages in a slow-burning book. They crossed a dead town where the buildings leaned like drunks, shutters swinging loose in the wind. No people, no sound, just a child's doll face down in the dust. Another day they came upon a buck tangled in barbed wire. Elijah approached slowly, whispering something she couldn't hear. It kicked, panicked, but he cut the wire clean, soothed it with a touch. The animal limped off. Clara watched, chest aching. Everywhere they passed, it seemed Elijah was trying to fix something the world had broken. And then, she broke. It was a hot afternoon. The trail climbed hard and steep. Her horse stumbled. Clara's nerves strung. Too tight for too long, snapped. She dropped the reins. "Why did you do it?" she shouted at him. "Why me? Why raise your damn hand if you were just going to walk around like a ghost?" Elijah stopped, turned. Then, slowly, he knelt. He picked up a stick and began to draw in the dust, a rough square, house. A small figure beside it, woman, a tiny mark in her arms, child. Then he drew a flame across all of it and wiped it away. Clara's breath hitched, her anger fled like a gust in open fields. She crouched next to him, said nothing, just stayed there in silence, both of them bent over a wound neither had named out loud. He stood, brushed off his coat, and offered her a hand. She didn't take it, but she didn't need it either. They walked side by side the rest of the way down the ridge. The trust came like water to dry earth, slow, reluctant, but real. When her ankle swelled from riding, Elijah didn't wait for her to ask. He stepped off his horse and walked beside her, let her ride while he led, made a sling from canvas to hold her foot. At night, he stayed awake longer, kept one eye on the fire and the other on the shadows where coyotes prowled. Clara started talking more. Not deep things, just observations, thoughts. He never responded, but he listened. Fully, with presence so heavy it felt like a blanket. And just when she'd started to feel something like peace, the sky turned black. Clouds surged over the hills, churning like boiling water. The wind came fast, trees groaned, thunder cracked, they scrambled for cover. Elijah found an old way station, a roofless log cabin, walls still strong. He led her inside, stripped branches for fuel, worked fast to build warmth while rain battered the world outside. Clara sat shivering, soaked through, watching him move like the storm was chasing him from inside, too. He cut his arm on a beam while fixing the shutter. Blood ran down his coat sleeve, mixing with the rain, but he never stopped. He made a fire. He wrapped her in both blankets. Then he sat in the corner, back against the wall, and waited. Clara watched the flames, watched him, and wondered how someone so broken could still protect what hadn't even healed yet. Outside, lightning lit the woods like ghosts screaming. Inside, a girl and a silent man sat inches apart, carried by grief, stitched together by kindness, still waiting for dawn. Rain hit the forest like it wanted to drown the earth. It drummed on leaves, smashed against bark, filled the air with a roar that swallowed footsteps, whispers, even prayers. The trail had turned to mud, sucking at their boots with each desperate step. Lightning split the sky in ragged teeth, revealing the broken silhouette of an old way station cabin tucked into a glen between two dying trees. They stumbled inside. The roof sagged, half-rotted, but the stone hearth still stood, and the wind howled past it like it remembered fire. Elijah dropped his rifle and went to work without a word. Clara followed, teeth chattering, the wet wool blanket clutched around her like armor. He scavenged what he could: damp logs, a pile of pine needles, old bird nests, even a broken drawer. Blood ran down his left arm from a branch gash. Deep. Ugly. He didn't look at it, didn't flinch. Clara watched as he struck the flint with steady hands. Sparks. Smoke. Then, flame. She sat near it, letting the heat lick her skin in aching waves. Her knees tucked tight under her chin. Outside, the storm raged like war. Inside, silence thickened between them. And then, without looking at him, she spoke. "I'm not a virgin anymore." Elijah turned his head slowly, not in judgment. Just listening, I mean. Her voice cracked. "I'm not for sale anymore. You didn't buy me, I get that now." He didn't answer, but he didn't look away either. She reached into the pocket of her threadbare dress and pulled something small from its depths. A tin button, a little rusted, a little dented, the kind of thing you'd miss unless it meant something. My mother sewed this into every dress she made me, called it a charm, said it'd hold me together. She placed it into his hand, palm to palm. "I don't know what you're trying to build, Elijah, but maybe you need something small to start with." His fingers closed around it slowly, reverently, like he was afraid it might vanish. The fire snapped and flared. For a moment, the world outside seemed far away, just wind and stories. Then came the voices, low, cruel, familiar. "Check inside." Clara froze. Her body remembered those voices before her mind did. The laughter, the boots, the man who licked his lips at her bandits. Auction day demons who'd followed her scent like wolves through rain. Elijah rose in one fluid motion, all quiet fire and calm death. He grabbed the rifle by the barrel and pointed sharply to the crawlspace beneath the hearthstone. Clara hesitated. He didn't yell, didn't force her. He just looked at her, Trust me." She slid into the dark. Outside, a boot kicked the door open. "Thought I saw smoke. Oh, hell. It's him." Gunshots exploded. Wood shattered. Thunder answered. From her hiding place, Clara saw shadows crash against each other, saw Elijah move like a ghost trained in war. No wasted steps, no mercy. One man screamed. Another fled. Then, silence. She waited, waited. Rain still fell, and then she heard the collapse. Clara crawled out, knees slick with ash. The fire still flickered. The cabin was wrecked. 2 men lay dead, one near the door, another slumped by the wall. A third had dragged himself a few feet toward the brush before bleeding out. Elijah was on his side in the mud, eyes half open. Blood soaked the front of his coat, spreading slow and black. His rifle lay inches from his fingertips. "No." Clara dropped beside him, gathering his head into her lap. "No, no, no. Elijah, look at me." His breathing was shallow, rattling. She pressed her hands to his chest, trying to stop the bleeding, trying to keep her voice calm. "You don't get to do this," she whispered. "You don't get to save me and then just leave." He blinked. Barely. She could feel his body turning cold. "Please," she said. "Please don't go. You're the only one who didn't treat me like something to win." His hand moved. Slow, deliberate. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled something out with trembling fingers. The button, the one she gave him. He pressed it into her palm, closed her fingers around it. Then his arm dropped, and his eyes closed. Clara shook. She bowed her head over him, rain dripping through holes in the ceiling, firelight flickering against her wet cheeks. Everything felt still, like the world itself was waiting. She held the button against her heart and whispered, "I'll build it for you. Whatever it was, I'll make it real." Outside, dawn broke. Pale light pushed through the clouds, gentle and pink. Clara didn't move. She just sat there, holding the man who raised his hand when no one else would, and prayed the fire would stay alive just a little longer. The wind was quieter now. It still moved across the high plains like a song with no words, brushing golden grasses and nudging the wildflowers that grew along the fence line. But there was a peace to it, like the land itself had exhaled. The cabin stood where the trees thinned and the horizon stretched wide. Nothing but sky, hills, and breath. Half-built, but proud. Roof patched with fresh pine slats. A door that swung on new hinges. Smoke curling steady from a stone chimney. Clara stood on the porch, hammer in hand, her sleeves rolled up, hair braided and tucked under a wide straw hat. She wiped the sweat from her brow and turned toward the side wall where a man in a sling was stacking firewood. Elijah. He moved slower now, favoring his left side, still healing from the gunshot wound that nearly took him. But he moved with purpose, one log at a time. Steady. Solid. When he'd first opened his eyes in the healer's hut outside Bent Creek, she thought he was still half dreaming. The old woman tending him had nodded and left them alone. He'd looked at Clara, eyes hazy but sure, and whispered his first word to her. Stay. She had. They didn't speak of what had happened, or what might have. There was no dramatic confession, no clumsy attempts at ownership, just the rhythm of hands working, of soil being turned, of seeds being pressed into the earth. They built without blueprint, repaired what they could, salvaged what they couldn't. Clara patched old windows with linen and glue. Elijah carved door frames and chairs. They traded with nearby settlers, goats for nails, eggs for oilcloth. The world didn't care what they'd survived, so they made a life in spite of it. She learned the sound of his footsteps. He learned the hum of her voice when she sang to herself while sweeping. They didn't always need words. Sometimes trust is quieter than love. One morning, Clara went to fetch water from the well Elijah had dug weeks earlier. The bucket caught, splashed, and rose heavy with cool promise. As she bent to lift it, something caught her eye, sunlight glinting off a shape tucked into the beam of the doorframe. She stepped closer. It was a small tin button, embedded carefully into the wood, polished, familiar. Beneath it, carved with a careful hand, was one word: home. Clara's breath caught. It wasn't just a button anymore. It was an anchor, a promise, a memory made solid. Her eyes burned. She pressed her fingertips to the word. Wood, still warm from sun. Behind her, Elijah stepped softly across the grass. She didn't turn. He didn't speak. He simply placed his hand over hers, calloused palm over trembling fingers. They stood like that for a long moment. Not clinging, not claiming. Just present. That night after supper, the sky burned orange, then faded into indigo. Stars hung low, closer out here, like they were leaning in to listen. Coyotes howled in the distance, but they didn't come close. They sat on the porch, elbows brushing. Elijah, for once, spoke without being asked. I raised my hand, he said quietly, voice rough from disuse, because no one raised theirs for her. Clara didn't ask who her was. She already knew. She looked at him, heart thudding in her chest. You did. Their eyes held. No vows, no declarations, just the shared weight of what they had lost, and what they were beginning to build. Their life wasn't easy. It was stitched, together from pain and silence, from rainwater and broken nails, but it was theirs. Built not from rescue but recognition, from two people who refused to let the world decide their worth, from one small act of defiance that became a foundation. They called her a prize, a thing, a burden to be passed. But when a silent man raised his hand, he wasn't claiming her. He was reminding her she was worth saving. And maybe, just maybe, she could save someone too. Call to action. CTA for YouTube. If this story moved you, if you believe quiet heroes exist and small acts can change lives, please like, comment your favorite moment, and subscribe to channel for more cinematic frontier stories like this. Your support helps us keep these voices alive.